I am thrilled to be introducing the kickoff keynote speaker for this conference. David and I actually have a lot of history. He spoke at one of my very early MoDev events. We've done a number of events together. And when we were sitting in the day one office in Seattle at Amazon, and we had agreed that Amazon would be sponsoring this conference, two immediate questions is who would be the keynote speaker, number one, and immediately they said we would want David Isbitski to be the keynote. So then we went off on our journey to find the home for the Voice Summit. And we ended up here in Newark and at NJIT. And as I was going on stage to do a live announcement in April with Mayor Ras Baraka, I sent an email to David and said, hey, by the way, we're going to be announcing in about 5 minutes that we're going to be hosting the Voice Summit in Newark and at NJIT. And he shot me right back a note and said, I have chills. I'm an NJIT alumni. And that is just a cool story. Let's give that up, right? Talk about fate. Talk about fate. So I am thrilled to be introducing you to David Isbitski, the Chief Evangelist for Amazon Alexa. Let's give it up for David. Thanks, buddy.
Is there a mic?
Oh, Pete. I thought you were Mike. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's give a round for Pete. That is the first time I ever did an introduction like that in the beginning, and that was amazing. So thank you for doing that. I think, I was fortunate enough to be with this product since the beginning. I was employee one in our skills marketing group, and I'm convinced at this point now, almost 4 years later, that the most important thing about this technology wave right now is people. What we all just did, where we broke down whatever boundaries existed before we opened our mouths and we went and we introduced ourselves to each other, it's huge. And, I was one of those, it's the person that won the prize. I have a picture of myself here when I was 12. I can't wait to show it to you. I was one of those kids where I was upset that my parents didn't understand what I was doing. I was like, why can't anybody else get how to program computers? Why is this so hard? What are all the boundaries, right? And I've made a career out of basically educating people. And what's really exciting to me now is that people who have been left behind, where the technology barrier to learn that and to use even a mobile device, right? My mom still prints out emails for my dad, but he talks to Alexa all day long. He has Q&A, he asks for the weather, he asks for music, and it's amazing how many boundaries that is now opening up, and you're all part of that. And when I was here, that student that said they don't know what they want to do yet, when I was walking around this campus as a senior, I had no idea what I wanted to do either. In fact, the kind of job that I do now didn't exist. But I had this passion for technology. I remember this course at NJIT. I don't know if you all still have it. It was called Computers and Society. And it really stuck with me. It was about the technological divide and how that can really change things for the better or the worse. And it was really up to us as people going into that industry to make technology accessible. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I know there's a lot of different backgrounds here. We have some amazing speakers. We have people who are thinking about voice for their brand, for work. Maybe you're just tinkering and you're a hobbyist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my vision for how conversational UIs can break down that divide. And I'm fortunate enough where I can actually share some statistics too, and I'm going to use statistics from Alexa, so I'm going to share what we've seen with some of the momentum. How many people here have an Echo? Okay, I love that. When I was, here's a little story. So 2014, I'm walking around in New York. We hired one other person. It was a BDM, Joe. And we were literally going around New York to different companies asking them if they were interested in an Echo. And they were like, why would we care about a speaker, right? And I remember I won't say the name of the company, but they were having an internal hackathon, and we had an Echo set up, And they were like, wait a minute, I can just talk to this? And it was like the light bulb went off. And it was maybe 6 months after that where I started to get questions from the press, and instead of saying Echo, they actually said, I was talking to her, or I was talking with Alexa. And so it was that human connection. When you have a conversation, and I'm listening, and you're listening, and we get each other, it's very personal. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the momentum we have. You're going to be here for 3 days, so I want to set the stage of what some of the terms are. So you're going to hear things like ASR, NLU, utterances, intents. And I remember in the beginning, there was one other engineer, and we were like, how do we describe these things to people? Because even developers wanted to look at this like it was code, that it was in some kind of order, and it's not. It's actually teaching an AI about how to have a conversation. So it's very different. It's very human. And so I'll walk you through some of that, and then I've got some videos and other things to share that I think you'll enjoy. Sound good? Okay. And there's going to be a little bit of a delay here when I push this, so I apologize. All right, so we've all lived through these different types of interfaces, and what I'm seeing now for me is this rise of the voice-first generation with kids. And I think, my generation, it doesn't get enough credit for what the 80s did for science and technology, right? So we had the first game console. I try to explain Atari to my kids, and this was my Coleco. I still have this. And, Star Wars came out at the same time, and that was a phenomenon. I mean, how many people here dressed up, right? Like Han Solo and Princess Leia. And it was an incredible, inspirational time if you were a kid to dream about we were going to have robots someday. With Star Trek, we were going to talk to computers someday. Here's me, 12 years old, thinking I'm cool. I connected my ColecoVision controller to my 64. And I sat there and I learned how to code and I programmed. And I don't think Commodore gets enough credit of how that ignited an industry. You go and you talk to some of the people in this field, the vision of what we could do and what we could bring with technology someday. And I'm seeing that, some of you parents here who have little ones who maybe can't read and write yet, but are having conversations with Alexa, it truly is that first generation where human beings are interacting with AI every single day. And we're here at a college, and I think as the years go by, where you're going to see lots of innovation, are those people who naturally work alongside human beings and alongside AI. And here's a little video of an example of I see this in my household every day. I see things like this.
5, 6. Alexa, how many stars are in the galaxy?
Many astronomers believe it contains at least 100 billion stars.
7.
So it's just that ability at any time to have a conversation about a topic and get an answer back instantly. Think about that. We didn't have that. How many of you growing up, it was if you needed a fact, there was no Google yet, right? You had to go and ask the people around the neighborhood. This is how urban myths started. And so the ability to just have a conversation, whether that's an AI or that's another human being interacting with, it brings people closer together. And what's really changed is the technology behind this. We've had mobile phones where we could dictate our voice. We've had IVR systems where we can call in and we all hit 0 so we can get to an operator, right? But now, through NLU, or natural language understanding, there's just exponential growth through the power of the cloud, machine learning, that machines understand context. They understand intent. When I talk to customers, I often hear, I have no idea what I asked Alexa. I just know that she figured it out for me. And that's really what changed. Now, if you're a brand, you need to start thinking about that. What does it mean to meet your customer in the moment? To have a real conversation with them, to ask how they're doing, to not have to send a survey out, a couple days later. There's immense insight that you can do when you're having a conversation versus building this type of visual UI. And so we really feel that conversation, with it being the most natural and easiest way, that this will become the primary user interface. It won't replace our phones, at least not anytime soon, and it won't replace the web. But if I can do something just by asking, that is going to be the muscle memory in my head. How many people here, if you're staying in a hotel, at some point in the past 24 hours called out for Alexa, right? Yeah, me too. And now I carry a Dot with me. And so we have Alexa for hospitality, which is the ability to actually have a digital assistant like Alexa when you're traveling. And that is because the switch in your head, there's muscle memory there that you're getting used to just being able to ask for things. And so what I want you to think about while you're at the conference this week is, what is it to have a conversation with another human being? So if you're a brand and maybe you've spent millions of dollars on your logo, what does it mean when no one sees your logo? When you have a conversation, what does your brand sound like? Do you want Alexa to talk? Do you want to have a spokesperson to talk? Do you want to have recorded audio? How do you reach generations that maybe haven't had technology in the past and you haven't targeted, right? And how do you reach generations that can't read or write yet? The kids' skills, by the way, are the fastest growing area in Alexa skills today. And so your customer base is growing across the human paradigm, right? Across all age groups. I want to share another video. And I think this is huge. I do hear from people who have an Echo Spot or an Echo Show. We have this technology that allows you to drop in. So drop in, rather than trying to figure out how you do it with a phone, you're sitting there and in the moment, you just want to connect with your kids, or you just want to connect with grandma. You can simply ask for that.
I miss you so bad. I wish you didn't have to go. Alexa, call home.
Calling home.
Surprise! We miss you!
This is amazing.
And I love that video. I was just telling someone before, as a technologist, I've always done the mother-in-law test. My mother-in-law, we love each other, we get along great. She never has any idea what I do for a living. And I was over there like 2 years ago, and she said, "Hey, Dave, check this out. I got this Echo thing." She didn't even order it off Amazon. She ordered it off Home Shopping Network. And she did it so she could pull up, she's like, "I could pull up all the Eagles albums that I ever want to listen to. Watch this." So she was excited and passionate, and she was showing me, and I'm like, "Mom, you know, I work on this." And she's like, "Oh, that's what Alexa is." You know. And so I continue to see more and more stories. I got an email from someone. He said, "Alexa saved my dad's life." And I'm reading through the email, and he's like, "My dad is 97, and he was having a stroke, and he called out for help. And Alexa called emergency services, and they came, and they saved his life." And then he sent me photos of his father celebrating his 98th birthday. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, I've worked in web and I've worked in mobile, but I've never seen that connection, that conversation and voice and that empowerment that this can bring. And so at Amazon, we truly believe that this represents the next major disruption in computing. And when you see a conference like this, for any of you that were around when the internet, you know, with the rise of the internet, it was like Voices, where you saw pockets. And I see this all the time. I'll go speak to a conference that's digital marketers, and they're not speaking to the developers. Or I'll speak to the developers, and they're not speaking to the brands. Or I'll speak to podcast audience, and they haven't figured out how they need to speak to the developers and actually open that up. And a conference like this that Pete's brought together, I'm seeing that. I'm seeing all of you in one place. And you know something is disruptive and is that big when you have all of those conversations. It breaks down all of those barriers. So let's talk a little bit about Alexa skills and the momentum that we've seen from our customers. So Echoes are now available in over 80 countries. I love this because when I'm out on Twitter, and I know some of you are all here today, I met some earlier, developers will tweet out and say, Black Friday was great, and then they show all the increases they've had in their skills actually being used. And if you don't know skills, an Alexa skill is basically you taught Alexa to do something. So I can order a Domino's pizza, or I can get my bank balance, or I can ask, Fitbit for my day and how many steps I have. And so we're seeing more and more of that. I was at Bluetooth World, gosh, it was maybe 2014, and I was on this panel, and anybody who's in smart home for a while may remember this conversation. There was this conversation, this is like IoT days too, that we need the unified interface. That was the talk of the entire day. We need this unified interface. And I'm on this panel, and I was like, hello, we have this unified interface. It's called our voice. And what happened was we moved to open Q&A, and the audience was telling the other panelists to shut up. They were like, hey, be quiet. I want to hear from the Amazon guy about talking to this smart home stuff, right? And so light bulbs are like the gateway drug. They were for me. You turn one light on, and then suddenly you want the ability to talk to the temperature, your TV. We just announced the ability to set sound like equalizer to be able to do bass and things like that. So now there's over tens of millions of these connected smart home devices. In fact, there's over 12,000 devices from more than 2,000 unique brands. I was at a Connections conference. I was keynoting a big smart home conference, and I had this organization of real estate agents that came up to me. Here's a tip if you're selling your home, by the way. And it was around the time when we launched the Echo Dot 6-pack. So you could buy 6 of these Echo Dots for like $200 US. And she said, Dave, we're training our real estate agents. We can spend $200 on Echo Dot, and now we've enabled a smart home. It's that simple. I buy a couple light bulbs, and now I'm selling my house for thousands more because I can control the thermostat, the lights, and everybody can just do it with their voice. It's like, this is incredible, right? And so we're seeing that across smart home and all other types of industries. We just had Prime Day, and we announced some of the things that happened with Prime Day, and I can't wait to see some of the developers tweet some of the bumps and statistics once these devices. Anybody order any Echo devices on Prime Day and you have it already? All right, oh, nice, I love seeing that. All right, so the best sellers worldwide were both voice-first devices. This is huge. This is the first time we've ever seen this. This is what's got me excited. So Fire TV Stick with Alexa voice remote and the Echo Dot. The biggest event ever for Echo devices with screens. So Echo Show and Echo Spot. So multimodal experiences. What does it mean if I do have a device with a screen like you saw with the phone call? What type of information should I display in that scenario? There was more than 1 million smart home devices purchased by customers in the US. So a pretty successful Prime Day. And let's talk about skill engagement. So skill engagement, people talking to Alexa devices with these third-party skills grew nearly 75% in 2017, so that's 50% year over year. There are tens of millions Alexa-enabled devices. There's 45,000 Alexa skills. Here's a funny story. I remember, it was the real early days, and Jeff was a big proponent of just letting people, getting this into the hands of people and letting them use it. And we launched skills. I remember sitting around a round table, and we had 10 skills. And the number one was ask for a fart. And I was like, is this going to be my life now, right? And everybody's like, no, you don't understand. If you have a fart app, that means you're successful. Every mobile app's had that, right? And there were other things like cat facts. And then every week we would look and we would see more and more skills would come in, and we'd see more and more engagement. And now we're at over 45,000 skills. And then what would happen is we would hear from customers. In fact, I remember Jeff got an email from a customer saying there was too many skills. This was probably when we were around 1,000. And we didn't have categories yet. And this is when it really taught me the lesson of, even if you have something planned, you really need to listen to the customer. So we were already thinking about doing categories, and Jeff was like, I want you to go call and have a phone conversation with this customer. So it was me, this other person, he's now the VP, heads up skills, and one other person who did engineering. And we were on a phone call. He was from New Jersey, so maybe he's here. And we couldn't say anything yet, but like, we get that, we understand categories, and yes, you know, it's hard. And at the same time, I remember leaving that meeting, and I was doing this, this kind of tour just to show people how to create things. And I took one of the developers with me, Matt, and I was like, Matt, could you just do something to do sorting? And he went back to his hotel room, and it was that night we had sorting the next day. If anybody remembers that, you could sort by what your skills were, ascending and descending. So it was that scrappy in the beginning, but it was very much listening to customers. And the fact that 1,000 skills was too much, to me, I was like, wow, this is, you know, this is something. And now people engage with Alexa. You know, you can say, Alexa, what are the top skills? Alexa can suggest skills. We have hundreds of thousands of developers building these Alexa experiences. And in fact, now we're at the point where 4 out of 5 customers with an Echo device in the US have used Alexa skills. So if you are a brand and you're thinking about doing this, what you need to think about is, in my mobile app, what are, I don't know, 80% of my customers doing every single day? Right? Maybe it's orders. So maybe like a Capital One's skill, you could say, how much did I order on Amazon yesterday? Right? You want to know how much you spent on Prime Day or something like that. You have the ability to just ask for information. So you can tie in and be able to do that through voice. All right, so conversation is complex. Let's talk about some of the problems that needed to be solved, and hopefully this gives you an understanding as you go through this conference of some of the ideas and the topics and the approach for things. So the way that we've approached it is we've created 2 SDKs. We have what we call the Alexa Skills Kit, and this allows you to teach Alexa to have conversation about things. So this is ordering pizza, getting your bank balance, getting your fitness. We also give the ability for you to put Alexa into things. So if you have a Sonos speaker, if you have Alexa in your car or your refrigerator, in fact, you know, maybe someday we'll have it right here and I could say, Alexa, put on the big Jumbotron, right? All of that is freely available for anyone to put into their product, with the thought being that voice should be everywhere. As you get used to having a conversation, that should be enabled across all of the different types of products that you use. And what we do is Alexa sits in the cloud. She can understand when a human being is talking, so you have ASR, and then NLU, that's the understanding of the intent. What's actually going on here? What does somebody want? What is that human being looking for? And this is just a quick chart of what it looks like. So you may have an Echo device where audio is being streamed up, and that speech recognition is happening up in the cloud. And here, I want you to catch this. If you want to build a speech experience, you already have that part on the right. You probably have a RESTful service for your mobile app, for your web browser. You automatically have that now for an Alexa skill. And you know, it's just not Alexa, it's everything. All of the conversational UIs, all of the smart assistants across this entire space are working the same way. Think of it like it's the new HTML. It's just sitting, the technology, it's already there. It's just sitting on top of that. The hard part is figuring out how to have that human conversation. And in fact, that's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. And you know, it's not going to be your developers, by the way. Asking your developers to create a good conversational experience is like asking them to make a good PowerPoint. It's a different skill set, right? It's a different side of the brain. You need to start thinking about human context. So I want to give you some examples of what it means to actually understand intent and how Alexa and all of these other artificial intelligence can break down language and understand it. So if I said Alexa 40 times, what you're seeing here is the enunciation, the sounds. So in US English, there's 26 letters, but there's 44 phonemes. And phonemes are the actual sound that you hear from words. So you say tomato, I say tomato. And this is where we get into the beauty of human beings and language. Just in Jersey, so I grew up in Toms River in South Jersey, and we would say things like, I'm going to the grocery store. And then I come up here into Newark, you're going to the food store. And it's just soda pop, right? Or I'm going to have a soda. I'm going to have a sub. And now where I am near Philly, we say hoagies. You hear that? Ho, right? Home. And that dialect, I mean, there are places around the world, like in Belgium, where you can go 10 miles and it's completely different. So you cannot break it up into actually what the words look like. It has to be the sound. So if I said 40 times, what did you all think? Did you think, it's 40 times, 40x? I know I come from, programming background, so I did. But what about 4T times? Maybe we want to get some caffeine after this. And it's funny because a lot of the developers, when they were first creating skills, ran into this. They were like, Dave, every time I go to use 4, looking for the number 4, Alexa thinks it's 4. Or 8, I ate something versus the number 8. It's stuff you don't even think about because you're dealing with written and visual, but that comes into play when you're conversational. Or how about we're going to go play some golf after this, right? Give me some tea times, or maybe we're going to go do it as a group. So I have 4 tea times. So just in this one example, I said 40 times. You can see there's 4 different things that could possibly be. And so it's up to the NLU engine to understand the intent. And the way that we do this in the computer science field is we build language models. And the models are predicting what word is going to come after that based on the context and hearing people actually use language. There's a higher chance that one word is going to come after another word if it's used in a sentence a certain way, or if it's used in a conversation. And we just intrinsically know that as human beings. When we're having a conversation with another human being, we can read their face in under 50 milliseconds. Oratory is what we were as a human race well before the written language. And so machines now are finally catching up to the point, and it's very early days, but we can begin to understand context with the help of all of us talking about what type of conversation that context happens in. And then this is where we get back to that chart. So let me break this out into terms that you're going to hear this week. You're going to hear things like utterance. And an utterance is just what I said as a human being. An intent is what I meant for that action to be. We, as human beings, we don't always say what we mean, right? But there is a lot of things you can do to look at the context of something. So if I said, Alexa, ask my caddy for those tea times we talked about. What's really important here is 4 tea times. That's what the human being said. And then my caddy. So this could be an Alexa skill. This could be, I'm going to order a ride. I'm going to order a pizza. But I could also say something like, when is the next start time? So you're going to find context is super important as human beings. We assume that that's going to continue. If you and I have a conversation and we introduce ourselves and then the next time we get together, we don't say our names again. But a computer would. A mobile app's going to show you the same interface that you've used for the past 10 years unless they have a redesign, right? But conversation should not. It should evolve over time. It should flow like water. It should adapt to your preferences. It should understand you. And so if we go, and we look at what that was, we give it a name. So I'm going to say, this is my get tea time intent. Now what happens if I say something like, what tea times are available next Tuesday, right? So I get a value here. And this is where the magic begins to happen. If you have any kind of programming background or computer science program, this is where you'll be jumping around in your seat a little bit. Is that all of these assistants, Alexa included, can now take spoken language and convert it into programmatic data types that machines understand. So if I say next Tuesday, I can do that date, although next Tuesday would be the, 31st. And I don't have to worry about coding that date. I can just talk like a human being. This is where NLU comes in. And this is an example from our portal, so this actually shows you what this would look like. It's not code. I'm actually teaching the computer that if I want to ask, this is an example we have where you can ask things about space, how big is Jupiter, how far is the moon, things like that. On the right are all of the ways that a human being would ask. Once I've done that, Alexa's going to build a language model behind that, and she's going to match every time somebody asks a question like this. It's not every single question that will ever be answered. And that is what programming computers has been for decades. That's no longer the case. We're actually teaching the AI to understand the conversation. And then we create a contract for that conversation. So here I say people can ask for a space fact, or they can ask for help, they can stop, they can cancel. And by the way, you don't have to worry about how they do those things. People actually ask Alexa to stop things by saying, Alexa, shut up. Has anybody ever done that? I see some hands. So we are going to go ahead and teach Alexa how people ask to turn off a light switch, how they ask to change the temperature. You never have to worry about that. You only have to worry about whether you want that to be part of the conversation or not. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we created this thing called the built-in library, with the idea being, you know what, and this is part, I want to sidebar here for a second. I have this dream, ever since I was a boy, and I was programming that Commodore computer, that programming was too hard, and that everybody should be able to program. And it seems funny, because I've had this occupation where I've been a developer and I've taught developers, but I've always felt like, by the time I retire, if I've put myself out of business, or I've at least changed it, where the AIs are coding most of it themselves, and the programmers are the ones that are helping teach the AI, that I've been successful. And I feel like this is the beginning of that. I don't have to figure out what a music album looks like, what a song looks like. Alexa just knows. She knows what the weather is. She knows that books have publishers, and publishers have addresses, and addresses have streets and zips. And the more that the AI learns about all of those things in the world, the less that I have to teach it. If I just say an address, it'll know. And by the way, there are intricacies to addresses as well that we don't think about. We have types like European city. If I'm going to Berlin, but I speak German, that sounds very different than it does US English or UK English. In fact, I found that out when I flew into Berlin, and I saw the airport didn't say Berlin, but it said something very different, right? And I see some people chuckling. That is everything that Alexa will automatically take into consideration. So numbers, dates, times, lists. And what's great about this is it works exactly like I talked about before, where you can change spoken types into programmatic types. So if I say, show me the movies playing for tomorrow, Alexa will automatically give the program that date in a programmatic date. Does that make sense? So we're talking in terms of human beings, but the machines continue to communicate like they've always talked to each other, with code and enumeration. So if you're thinking about this now, there's a couple of design ideas, and we do have a voice design team. They're here today. They do an amazing job. You can get all of that information on our portal, and I think they're doing some sessions this week too. Be sure to check it out. I want to give you some general tips that I found, especially when I'm talking to brands. So when I talked about picking maybe one of the 3 things that your mobile users are doing every day, I want you to think in terms of utility. Not utility like Dave thinks it's cool, but utility in what Amazon customers are actually saying. And you could tell me if you agree or not as an Amazon Echo customer, which a lot of you are. So let's look at low utility. If I say I want to go and I want to browse for something, but I don't know exactly what that is. Maybe I want to look for deals. If you're doing that, let's say you're doing that without any visual component at all, so you're not doing it with an Echo Show or a Spot or anything, you're just asking. That's going to be a very long conversation, and you're not even going to get past the second sentence that's uttered, right? But if I could pull out the mobile shopping app, my Amazon app, and be able to do that, it's very, very quick. So it's low utility with voice. But on the flip side, if I'm reordering something, that is way faster. That's a lot of utility to just be able to ask and say. In fact, funny story, when we launched reordering through Alexa, I had no idea that we had done that until I was in the kitchen and I heard my wife say, Alexa, reorder cat litter. And I was like, how long have you been doing that? And she's like, 2 weeks. And I looked through the order history, and sure enough, it was there. And I was like, I had to be cool, so I was like, Alexa, reorder AAA batteries. And I got batteries. But it's very, very fast, and it's quick, and it looks at you. It understands you and your context and your order history. High utility. And then we can move up this scale. So if we look at something like telling, a lot of you may do this. This is what you saw where the child was asking about stars and things like that. If I wanted to know what the weather is in Newark, New Jersey, right? I would hear currently in Newark, New Jersey, it's whatever temperature. So it's a very quick reference point. So there's more utility to just be able to do that while you're doing other things. If we look at searching, not a general search, but a search where you would have had to drill down through a visual interface. Travel is a huge one. Concert tickets is another. So if I know I want to get Pearl Jam tickets for next weekend, that would take a while to figure out where they're being sold, to drill down through a site, to look for the specific city and then look for the specific price, whereas I can just ask for it. So we're starting to go way up in the utility. And then we look at things like smart home. And I could say something, I do this all the time, Alexa, turn upstairs to 70 degrees. And then she'll say the AC is now set to 70 degrees. That's way faster than me going all the way upstairs and then turning my Nest to 70 degrees. Make sense? So really start to think about the utility of things as a human being. Because if it is slower to do it with voice, or it's pretty close to do it with what it would be with mobile, I'm not going to. As human beings, we're always going to pick whatever fastest, whatever most convenient. So if I have a high utility task that I can do very quickly with voice, that's a winner. Now let's think about some other scenarios. So the first is context across turns. If I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask, Alexa, where is the Newark Museum? There's a logical next question. How do I get there? From here. Now, in the past, machines would have had a very hard problem with that, because how do I get there is a completely different question than where is the Newark Museum. But based on the context of the question that happened previously, and this is just natural with conversations as human beings, I want that follow-up question, and it's up to us to understand that context, and it becomes very, very powerful. And then we go into multimodal. So if I have devices that do have screens, and I say something like, Alexa, check on the baby, I don't want to just hear the baby's room. If that device that I'm talking to has a screen, please show me her. And you can see this. This is available today. There's also other products like Ring with the doorbell, where I can say, I have this in my home, Alexa, show me the front door. If the doorbell rings, I want to see it. Now, if I'm on a device, I'm having a conversation that doesn't have a screen, I won't see it. But it changes based on the modality of that device. If I ask for a flash briefing, I'm going to get a CNN flash briefing. But if I'm asking for it in front of a device with a screen, I'm going to see a video. So it changes based on the type of modality that I'm interacting with. And so that context is super important. Also, evolving device context. I'll just say, and this is probably a multiple thing. It certainly was a movie in the 90s. If I say something like The Running Man, right? And I say, play The Running Man. Now, if I'm on a device like the Echo that you see here, it's probably going to either play a song or a podcast or an audiobook. Now, if it knows I was already listening to the audiobook 5 minutes ago in my kitchen, but I got coffee and now I'm in the den, that's huge device context. It should now know to continue playing my audiobook automatically. If I was saying that to my Fire TV or something in my living room, then I want the movie to go ahead and continue playing, and I don't want the audiobook to play. And some of you, I have heard from customers now with the new Fire TV Cube that are starting to see this device context that needs to continue to evolve, where they have multiple Echoes around and they have the Fire TV and they're trying to play a movie and the music's also going. And so this is something that we all need to be thinking about, is where am I and what type of modality am I interacting with? And then super important is personal context. We have a technology called voice profiles. You can have Alexa learn your voice, and even if you don't do this, she'll now learn it over time. And when I talk and I say play the top hits, It's going to be the type of music I listen to. When my daughters go and play it, it's going to be Taylor Swift, right? And so there's just very different context based on who I am and the types of conversations I have. That expectation is there now from people. You'll see that reflected in the reviews, is that personal context you should know. And so it's about meeting people in the moment where they are. I want to give you a good example of this that would only happen to me in conversation.
Pulse, 120 over 30. Nurse, bandages.
Yes, doctor.
Alexa, make a donation to St. Jude.
How much would you like to donate?
You're gonna be okay.
So just seeing her kids play and the ability to say, you know what, I want to donate to St. Jude. I didn't have to pull up an app. I didn't have to go to a website. I just did that in the moment. Conversation can meet human beings in the moment where they are, helping them with what's important to them. And so we've released over 100 different features in the past year for developers. I know some of those developers are here, and I continue, and I know the teams all continue to hear, you know, hey guys, slow down a little bit. There's so many announcements, but we want to continue to iterate and iterate and iterate and make it as simple as possible to go ahead and create these amazing experiences for customers. And so one of the first things I hear when I talk to brands is, how do I measure this stuff? And so the first thing I say is, well, meet your customer in the moment, because the one thing you can't measure right now is what are your customers asking you? And you'll be able to do that. We have technology called fallback intent. So Capital One, who's here, they have a skill, and the first thing they saw a lot of their customers ask was, how am I doing? Right? I'm asking, just how am I doing? What's my bank balance look like? How's my stock portfolio look like? Just tell me how I'm doing, right? So meeting your customers in the moment should be the #1 thing you measure right now. And then after that, the first thing I tell brands is to go to Amazon.com/skills and pick on the category that you are at. So if I just went today, let's say some of you, and I know some of you are game devs, let's say you want to create a game. Go to Amazon.com/skills, click on games. You're going to see some of the top rated games. Some of these games, like Song Quiz, has over 9,000 reviews. So customers are playing this game and they're saying what they want, and you have the ability to go ahead and respond to them directly right there. Another thing that you'll see, and I'm going to just pick on my own skill here. This is just a D&D dragon dice roller. So I can see, you know, I'll be able to see the reviews here. I can go ahead and I can respond. But one of the things we do inside is we give analytics now. So the first thing you can do is you can go ahead and you can look at logs, but this is kind of a developer-y thing. So whether you're using AWS or not, I think most of your developers know how to log and they know how to understand. So if I said roll a 6-sided dice, this is what my live logging looks like. But I also have the ability to come in and look at retention across users. So as you can see here, not a lot of retention in my skill. It's just people are going to go ahead and use it every now and then to go ahead and roll a dice or check it out. Although one person did come back, yay me, right? And maybe they rolled a different side die. But here's something that's super interesting. Some of you may know, and you have an IPA for your mobile app, but what does that look like for voice? So we just released this, and I've heard tons of great feedback from people about this. I love looking at interactive paths. So what you can see here, the red is where people drop off, and the flow is how they get there. And so people are coming in, they're either rolling dice or they have no idea. And you're going to see this a lot. The first time someone rolls your skill, they have no idea. So they're just going to go ahead and start the conversation. So you have all of this data, and you have the ability to start look at analytics. And so meeting your customer in the moment and saying, wow, people are asking for this stuff that we've never had before. Why don't we add it and then check out the IPAs for how they're now interacting with that? And then if that doesn't match, they're going to tell you in the reviews. So how do we monetize this stuff? And you know, there's really 3 ways I want you to think about monetizing today. The first is, let's say you're doing a game, and I know Jeff from Amazon, Jeff Blackenberg, is going to, everybody's Jeff B from Amazon nowadays, right? I know he's going to go ahead and he's going to talk about this, like how you can create in-app purchasing, right? So a lot of this you're familiar with in the mobile space. I want to power up, I want a new level. But you could do things like subscriptions, or you can unlock the pro version. There are things where podcasts, you get additional content. You have the ability to do that right within the skill. I love this with Amazon Pay. Let's say I have a flash briefing about fitness, and one day I want to be able to sell sneakers on Amazon. I can do that, and I can monetize directly with Amazon Pay, and Alexa could say, would you like to buy the sneakers that I just covered in this podcast? And people in the moment, again, meeting them where they are, can say yes. And then if you're a company and you already have an existing customer relationship, so Domino's and Pizza Hut and Uber and Lyft and Capital One, this is what the experience looks like when I enable the skill. I log in with my credentials. So I log in with the customer ID and password that I already have with you. And once I do that, or I can log in with Amazon. Once I've done that, I'm now linked, and then the Alexa experience, the Alexa conversation becomes another endpoint for your existing customer relationship. So you can have them interacting with you on mobile, you can have them interacting with you in web, and conversationally, all using the same account, all having the same customer relationship with you. Does that make sense? All right. So what's next in the space? What are some of the new developments? Colin Davis is really great. I don't want to steal his thunder, and he's going to be presenting with Keith, which is another old friend of mine from J&J. So I don't want to steal their thunder on Alexa for Business, but I want to say this. How many of you here are taking Echoes into work? Because I do hear about this. All right. We heard about this a lot from customers, and the biggest thing was manageability. And wouldn't it be easy if Alexa could just start meetings for us? How many people here are great at setting up projectors? Or scheduling conference calls, or dialing people in, or opening bridges for, with all of the conference codes, right? None of that. You just have Alexa do that. We also have the ability, and I think we have some sessions on this too, to play games with physical gadgets. I grew up playing board games with family. We did not have our face in screens. And I've started to do this as family and friends come over. There's a bunch of games you can do with buttons. You can do Jeopardy. You can do Trivial Pursuit. One I really like is Hanagram, where you have the ability to scramble letters. And I watch my friends and I watch my family, and they're listening. They're not even looking when it's using multimodality with a screen. They're listening and talking to each other. And if there's one thing I could bring back to the world, it would be to get people's faces out of screens and back into looking with each other. And so I'm really excited to see the type of games that are coming out of this. How many people here wish you could teach Alexa to just say something? We heard from customers over and over again with that. So we said, why don't we create the ability, using these templates, for anybody to teach Alexa anything? And I've gotten all sorts of tweets from people with, I set up the ability for the babysitter to know when bedtimes are so my kids can't fool them. How to feed my cats. There's tons of dad jokes that Alexa now knows, thanks to me. There are burns that my kids have where they make fun of me with this, right? All of these, you have the ability to do games and other types of things in this nice, simple interface. It's just blueprints.amazon.com if you want to try it. And so if I went in and I wanted to write a story, let's say, you can see I'm putting in here NJIT. It's like the ad-libs. Everybody remember ad-libs where you just enter words? I do this for my kids when I travel so that they can have a story from me, especially my little one at night. And I want to show you a little quick video of what that might look like.
Oh, you should add a sound effect to the skill.
Great idea.
Call me when you land, okay?
I will. And don't forget.
Oh, I know. Don't worry. All right, buddy. You all ready for bed? Alexa, tell Carter's pirate story.
Carter knew he would have to be very brave, so he put on his bravest face, stood up straight and put his hands on his hips. They'll never steal my treasure, he said.
Right, no programming experience required. You have a library of sound effects. It's you sharing with your family. In fact, when we launched this, we heard, can I create something and give it to my parents? So now you have the ability to share with other people what you've created, and it's the ability to have that conversation and continue across all of those different age groups. And so I want to end it with this. I want to share two quick stories that both touched my heart. If there's anything you can take from this talk, what I want you to do is when you see a screen like this and you're looking whether it's to run an advertising campaign or a new app, I don't want you to ignore the person on the left, because that happens far too often. That audience is here now with voice. And you can create some amazing, empowering experiences for them. And I'm so excited to just see what the reach of this is becoming. The first story, this was a conference in New York I was at. And one of the audience members stood up. And this really sticks with me because my oldest daughter has trouble with math. And he said, Dave, my 5-year-old son got a 40% on his spelling test the week before Blueprints came out. And he just hated practicing. He was ready to give up on math. And so his father went into the Blueprints for math quiz, and he created some flashcards, and his son is now getting 100% every single week. I can't think of any other technology where that happens that quickly, and now we have a turnaround in education. Another story on the opposite spectrum is we took a bunch of echoes into a retirement community, and we filmed it. And I love this quote. I didn't think I'd see one in my lifetime, Martin said. When you get to be 93 and a half, you hear something beside your own voice, and it helps you get through the day. Conversation and voice is about people. It's about bringing us all together, and there's never been a better time to connect with each other. Thank you.